What's up, everyone? This is the Terranborn podcast. We are a group of narrative-focused 30K gamers here in Colorado. We run events and run monthly meetups and try to get the narrative 30K happening in Colorado. Keep it running, keep it going. I'm Nick Smith, a founding member of Terranborn, and joining me today is Sam House, who's also a founding member, and we're going to be discussing an upcoming event that we have. How's it going, Sam?
Hello, it's going well. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, of course. The thing that we made together.
Yeah. Still a privilege, still an honor.
All right, good. So we are running an event. Well, I should say you are running an event called Desperate Allies coming up in Colorado in April.
Yes.
It is a very unique format. So we want to kind of talk about how its format is structured, why it's called Desperate Allies, and then sort of just go an overview of the event and talk about what we can expect and how it's going to progress, narrative gaming in Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do a little bit of a read through on just some inspiration for it. But, Desperate Allies is really about trying to bring together people with allied lists and get those projects on the table and finished for those factions that are non-Space Marines that people, in my experience, talking to those in the hobby, have on the wings, that they want to get in and play with, but it's so hard to pull away from your favorite legion. So we're just trying to incentivize seeing some weird stuff on the table. There's a piece of flavor text from the Exemplary Battles book with pictures of Fulgrim in it. Best Primarch ever, that I think captures pretty well what the vibe is. So I'm just going to read that, and then that'll set the tone a little bit here. The Horus Heresy spanned innumerable dire battles in bitter grudges, most long since forgotten or reduced to grim and terrible rumors. These battles are no less part of the Horus Heresy than those great confrontations that live on in legend, and those that fought and died in those furious days, no less heroes of their age. These were warriors the like of which shall not be seen again, warriors whose panoply of war was as unique as the myriad battles in which they fell, exemplars of an age now lost to time and hate. So yeah, the vibe there is like there's so many stories that we don't know because we're following the main characters through the heresy. Even if you've read all 52 of something books, including
54,
anthologies,
I think 56, maybe somewhere up there.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
There's still a lot that's untold, and the exciting parts of the heresy that we can tell that don't conflict with the canon, because I'm a big stickler for that. There's a lot of room to play in there. So I wanted to create an event that would incentivize those armies to come out on the board, and also for people to tell their own stories. We've got a lot of people in the local meta, in our Terranborn group specifically, that like building their own characters and bring a lot to the hobby, and forge that narrative and build relationships with each other. So this is an opportunity to make a story for your commanders, your praetor, your admech kind of tech priest or archmagos, whoever that might be, and not feel like you're taking away from those battles that we've done with named characters when we're doing Ispan, or I think 500 worlds might be in the cards for a future campaign and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely. And our last episode we talked a bit about Ben's event, where we forged narratives of our individual leaders forming bonds of brotherhood in the midst of combat. So just that narrative drive is what makes heresy games fun, I think. And seeing the humans is always a good sort of jolt to the system about how crazy Space Marines actually are when you think about it. It's the books, I think there's like 4 or 5 total books in the Heresy series that are like focused on humans, and the rest is just transhuman violence, which is fun and why we play Heresy. But it is cool to get that baseline comparison back.
Yeah, it's like the joke about having a regular dude compete in the Olympics for just context.
Yes.
You gotta have just like a baseline militia dude in there every once in a while so you can see how that is. And as an elite Space Marine player myself, with Emperor's Children veteran heavy list, it's nice playing against other factions. Sometimes you can see what your list can really do, and the trade-off, like, there's 3 squads for each one of mine, so you've got to really make those hits count. And
You
it's
better kill
cool to
them.
see those. Yeah, you got to get them.
Kill them 3 times as fast if they outnumber you 3-1 for sure.
Yeah, and if you've been run up against like the Terminator meta or las cannon support squad spam, it's nice to play something different, and that kind of goes into the structure of the event and some of the challenges looking at and brainstorming on this when setting it up was, how do I make an event that's going to be fun and competitive and incentivize people to bring stuff that might be a little squishy for a regular game, and still give them a good chance at winning and not just getting their face kicked in because they decided to take the fluffy list or take the humans or take AdMech, which is a little hard to get going with right now. So
yeah, absolutely. There's a Solar Ox player, I think, that lives in the Springs, and he goes into every game against Space Marines basically assuming he's going to lose and trying to figure out how to do his own mission within the mission so he can feel like he did the game, but he definitely lost the mission. So providing opportunities for players like that are dedicated to Ox, but then also for other people bringing their basic dudes in and still have a fun game that is narrative, but also they have a chance at winning. I think that's important to expand the meta.
Bless those guys. So there's
Dylan absolutely.
Connor and Joel, all our militia players, we appreciate you bringing the human fodder to the games and having the heart to fight a losing battle sometimes, because it adds a lot of interest and fun to a game that can be pretty samey sometimes when you're facing Astartes all the time. So yeah, this way there's a little bit of a leg up for those forces, and the way we decided to do it, and there might be other ways to do this, but the idea I wanted to come up with was something that's a bit of a look back at how missions were structured in 7th edition and looking at Maelstrom and the way the objectives were really mixed up, was making different objectives on the battlefield be scored based on your strength characteristic. So that way strength 3 has a lot more scoring opportunity than strength 4. So off the bat, you're at a big advantage if you're taking a lot of strength 3. And then those types of objectives are different also, because we want to try to create good stories. We want the terrain to really convey a meaningful sort of third party on the battlefield or tell a story that's worth fighting over. So those strength 3 objectives are those things that you would imagine your troops, your big mass infantry that are actually taking and holding ground, to be engaging with. The theory here being like a Space Marine's job is a shock troop. In the stories, they're there making drop pod assaults, jumping out of Thunderhawks. They're hitting the line where the leverage point is or where it's failing, and they're pushing back or they're seizing ground quickly to change the face of the battle overnight. But there's the untold millions, in some cases, Solar Ox or militia or cult forces that are following behind them. And you don't hear about them a lot other than that a Titan exploded and like 2,000 people died somewhere in the distance. But, there's a lot of things that go into warfare of just keeping your baggage train operating, right? Making sure you have communications and supplies, and that you have places to move troops around, and that you have good morale, and that you are coordinating with the other elements of your army. So those are kind of the themed objectives for strength 3, and they'll be built into the terrain. So each table is going to represent a different battle zone, and they've come up with different kind of objective structures that suit those elements of the battlefield. So there'll be some repeats, but it should feel very kind of integrated into the battlefield that you're playing over, as far as what that objective really means to you and your army, and why a Solar Ox unit can hold it, but a Space Marine's not going to be interested in that objective, and they're going to be doing something else.
Yeah, the Space Marine doesn't have time to sit there typing in ciphers or setting up box relays or whatever, deciphering communications or whatever they're doing. They have one objective, and it's usually go break something or someone over there quickly. It's not stand around and type in.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was trying to capture those moments where the battle's still unfolding. This isn't the last stand at the end where the main MacGuffin of that planet is being fought over, and that's what you would see in a heresy novel. It's like this is what's happening as the battle's developing. Here's how these like mixed squads are working together during that. So that's kind of the idea. Yeah, and there's a structure as well, so people can't, even if they wanted to, they can't just take all Astartes. They're actually limited to half their force or less, 1,500 points or less, being Astartes. So there's 3,000 point lists, 1,500 or less Astartes, and they have to take an allied detachment, hence the desperate allies. So we're gonna hopefully see a pretty good mix of people on the roster here. We've got a pretty good list of people already signed up for it, but there's still a few spots open.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're hearing this and you're in Colorado, sign up. Check out the Colorado Facebook page for Horus Heresy or the Discord. Hop in there, contact Sam, and get your name on the list. So we talked a little bit about the Strength 3 objectives, which are mostly involving the terrain and telling the story about what baseline humans can do. But obviously there's Strength 4 and also 5 objectives that you've written into the mission format as well.
Yes.
So why don't you go over a little bit about what 4 and 5 guys can do? What are the Astartes actually there to do?
So their whole thing is either seizing ground, or if they're in a defensive position, they have those Maelstrom type of objectives. So that's where that reference kind of comes in. And they're weighted as well. So you will have fewer Strength 4 objectives than Strength 3. So by and large, those Strength 3 objectives are going to be out there, and they're going to be giving you in-game bonuses. You might be getting a bonus to your reserve roll. You might be getting a morale bonus while you're holding those. The Strength 4 objectives, if you're attacking, those are going to be mostly just seizing ground, right? So that'll be generally one in your enemy's deployment zone, and then another outside of that in kind of the middle of the board.
Right, and so the Astartes are pushing forward while the Creepers hold the line a little bit.
Yeah, more or less, right? Like they're the tip of the spear. Not that we're all playing Sons of Horus, but more or less like a Space Marine's going to be.
He was just best at it. He's not the only one.
Right, exactly. So they're trying to. If you're an attacker, you're going for that enemy DZ. You're trying to get in there and put pressure on your enemy. And the offset here also is like just killing units and being good at attacking people is an in-game benefit, right? So you're maybe not scoring as many points because there's only 3 of those objectives, 1 in the enemy DZ and 2 in no man's land. But, having your Space Marines in your player's face while they're trying to like call in for reinforcements or an artillery barrage or whatever it is will be disruptive to your enemy. So they're still going to kind of get their advantage in that, like you've got a Space Marine running around in a game where you're guaranteed to go against at least half the list being non-Space Marines. Now they might be knights, but those knights aren't scored either. So
true, there's a lot fewer of those. But if you're taking Space Marines and you're going to be fighting at least some or most lists against Exilia, it doesn't matter if they're attack squad or not. They're going to be doing a lot of damage on the charge. So giving them those objectives to go do the cool charge that are like the opening scenes of the Heresy books where we're fighting stuff that isn't Astartes and it's not a really even fight. That's sort of what I'm excited to see happening, is the Astartes just ripping and tearing.
Yeah, chainswords getting to do what chainswords do, which is not bounce off 3+ armor, but actually rip people in half. Will be pretty dope. And there'll be sticky objectives as well, which is cool. So it's really incentivizing you to push forward, seize ground, get those main points. And if they get taken back from you or they get disrupted, disputed, then you might have to fall back and reclaim ground. But your job as a Space Marine is pushing forward and keeping pressure on the enemy. Now, if you're in the defender position, you'll have different objectives.
Right. And so by sticky, you just mean that the Astartes come to the objective, grab it, and then they can leave the objective, and it maintains that person's control until someone else comes and gets it back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I am borrowing from 40K, which I know is heretical to some players out there. But I believe like if there's a good game mechanic in any edition or any property, like if it makes the game better, use it, right? I'm just trying to tell a good story and then use the rules that best support. Hopefully that being a balanced mission that makes it fun for people who make narrative choice. So those sticky objectives are there to, they're just to incentivize Space Marines playing like Space Marines, which is like, I don't want to see a tactical squad sit on an objective all game and babysit it when their job there is to like move up and rapid fire bolters into the enemy.
And it's a good thing too, because at the end of the day, this I think has been said before on other podcasts, but there's only so many things you can use to score on a tabletop, right? You can go somewhere, stand somewhere, kill something. Those are kind of it. So how you change the way that those interact and like how you get those, if you're sticky objectives, if you're limiting it to strength, whatever you're doing to change them around to drive the narrative. I mean, I think that's only for the best, assuming it's all possible and good to score, which obviously making the list limiters, enforcing that sort of narrative structure that scores well in this specific mission set helps there as well. But overall, just making the objectives fit the narrative is the best way to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the competitive choice angle, I get that if you're a competitive player and looking at just like a strict calculated game design, those kind of things can be really satisfying, but there's plenty of event formats for that, and I think the default mission pack covers that pretty well. So in this case, when we're doing a structured event, trying to bring something different to the table and enable a story to come to life where you feel like your units have like a real job to do in the game,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about 3 and 4 for strength objectives. What can the strength 5 do? What about the Custodians, the Ogrins?
So
I'm not sure. I don't know what else is strength 5.
Yeah, I think armigers would count as well. It's strength 5 and above, so that excludes vehicles. But if you're in a walker or an automata unit, you're still going to be able to take advantage of that. So AdMech players, you're not frozen out with this, and demons have something to do there as well for those bigger units. In those strength 5 objectives, those are also for the attacker going to be more location based, because same thing as Space Marines, right? But even more specific or kind of hinge points. So we go down to only having 2 strength 5 objectives versus 3 strength 4 and 6 strength 3. And in this case, one's in the center of the table. The idea being like your strength 5 unit, those are going to be relatively rare. And if they're not in your army, they're going to have fewer points to score. But this kind of incentivizes some army building so that, make that strength 5 maybe a bit more elite. If you're thinking about taking Custodians, maybe think about making that only 25% of your unit total, your points cost total. So the center of the table there, like that's key. Prime time, raise the banner, be in line of sight of the rest of the units. You're sort of rallying the defenses. You're in the middle of that action, driving forward, and then 1 in the enemy DZ. So pretty straightforward, similar to the Space Marine objectives, but those are probably going to be scattered in no man's land and not quite on the same position, unless maybe there's a really cool piece of terrain right in the middle and you want to go fight on top of a platform or something like that. Players will get to decide where they place those strength 4 objectives, but it's going to be right in the center and then in the enemy DZ, and that'll be placed by the defender there in the enemy DC, so they can kind of choose outside of 6 kind of what their stronghold is that they're defending.
That makes sense. I do like when there's a bit of player agency at the beginning of the game, first defining the terrain and placing the objectives in a way that sort of works with their attacker defender status, and then also their army list and narrative in total. The aggressive guy might put it towards the front of the line because he knows he's going to be bouncing off of it, or vice versa if you're the bulwark of Iron Lehman Russes or something.
Yeah, the Blood Angels are going to ask if they can move their enemy DZ 24 inches forward.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
They're just thirsty boys, you know.
Yeah, so there is some player placement, which is cool, and that allows a little autonomy in that and some storytelling of what people think is interesting, or if they want to correct a little bit based on army composition for things that are going to be easy to get to or not. So there'll be a defender attacker roll off and kind of a priority role there. That's something that came up in the exemplary battles that I really liked, is that all of those missions are pretty asymmetrical, at least the new reprint of them that came out in Fallout 23.
A lot of those are unchanged. They're all sort of designed without balance, but with narrative. So I like that.
Yeah. And they, playing through them, they play pretty well. There is like a roll off to see who has initiative if you're not playing like the forces out of the mission, or you're not doing a straight up campaign. You're just borrowing from those rules. And I think that works pretty well for developing those asymmetrical things. So kind of borrowing from that here. In this case, defenders will get advantage because there's those player placed objectives, 3 being on the strength 4 side. So the defender will get to place 2 of them. And then with the strength 5 objective, the defender will get to place the one that is placeable. And then also the defender has different objectives, right? So the attacker, they're trying to seize ground, and that's pretty straightforward. The strength 3 objectives are what they are, right? Like the value of that comm center is what it is. It's not changing because you're the attacker or defender. That's literally like what you're fighting over, is these resources.
Right.
But in terms of like where the battle line is being drawn and who's in the back foot, that's going to change. So defender, for the strength 4 objectives, they'll have assassinate, which is going to be much like the Maelstrom objective from 7th edition, and I think it remained pretty much the same in 8th and even maybe 6th, which is just killing independent characters. And then no prisoners, so killing an enemy unit. And then hungry for glory, which is issuing a challenge during your turn. So as the defender, you're just trying to hold down the ground you have, but your bonuses are coming from just making your opponent pay for every inch of ground they're taking.
Yeah, a lot of like sort of priorities there in the way that a defender would need to break up the enemy army, divide and conquer type thing, kill the kill the HQs and that sort of thing. It all makes sense for something a defender would want to be prioritizing.
Yeah, and if you're playing an army that maybe wants to sit back and you don't want to roll for it, maybe you and your opponent decide like, no, this makes sense for you to be defender, me for attacker. Like say you got Night Lords and Imperial Fist on the Astartes halves, maybe just make the Imperial Fist defenders if you want to, because that's going to probably be a more interesting game than making the dudes with jump packs sit back and the guys who be behind a wall running forward with, and not quite getting there for 4 turns. So
absolutely. And that, I think just that alone is something that separates sort of narrative events from any sort of comp event, is just giving players that option. Like if you want to choose, you don't have to roll off.
Yeah, there's some horse trading there, but hopefully it works in everybody's favor, where like you're getting to do the thing your army wants to do, and so is your opponent. And you're both stronger as a result of it, but that's going to kind of allow you to fulfill your fantasies that you had in mind when you were building that army in the first place, and reward you for taking a theme that was very cool. Because we don't want people like making a super cool army that is designed to be this like spearhead unit that moves up and under artillery support and has these fast elements, and it's all working together very nicely, but because it's not optimized, it's not worth taking. You want people to get a chance for their army to do what it's made to do, and vice versa, right? So
absolutely. So is there going to be any sort of thought about that when you're going to the pairings? Or are you thinking it's just going to be random pairings for event day?
I haven't really decided fully on that. Like right now, we've got a pretty good mix. So we're sitting at 18 people have showed interest. I'm waiting on like final confirmation from a few guys as far as like really locking in their place. But we've got 7 loyalists and 6 traders. So we've got a pretty good split at the moment. There's a few if you can do math well. There's a few undeclared or that we don't know about yet that might get mixed around. But if we can do the classic Loyalist Trader split, that'll be ideal, and that'll make me happy. Beyond that, we'll probably randomize a little bit if people want to do grudge matches. Those are always fun. It's a bit weird at this point with this far into the edition and people having the same kind of Astartes armies for a while, and they have their nemesis legions. It tends to be every event you go to, you're kind of playing that grudge match. So it does seem like certain players in the local area play each other quite a lot.
Right.
I don't want to force people into games that they've already played a lot already. But it is always cool to see those. So we'll probably offer it up if anybody has a specific army that they've already talked about wanting to play, and otherwise just kind of randomize it. And hopefully we can influence some of those undeclared people to get a nice even split on the Loyalist and Trader side, because that just makes for a much better event.
Oh yeah, nothing sucks more than when the Solorox are Loyalists fighting Loyalists. Not good.
Yeah, and we're not doing like an overall team victory or anything like that with this. But if you get a split, it's always nice. You can track the victories, gets a little bit of the blood up and some camaraderie going between players, which is fun. And it makes you more invested in each other's games, I think, when you've got that going on.
Absolutely. You go into the lunch break and you're like, okay, the Traders have won 4 games and the Loyalists only won 3. We better win 5 this round, or it's gonna, Traders get the overall. So just a little extra motivation. And like you said, going around seeing other people's tables, it's always cool to see games in progress, but if you're invested a little bit in the outcome, it's even more entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. And and we'll try to probably pair up second round, like people with stronger lists together and vice versa, so that everybody's having a fun game, because there's going to be some weird matchups. This being a new mission format that hasn't kind of untested at the moment, we'll be tweaking it a little bit in the months coming up, but it's pretty new, right? And then also we've got some players who don't generally play a lot of narrative that this is their first foray into it. So we'll see how that goes with some of the stronger allied options like Custodes being in the mix and Knights, and then kind of try to pair those off if need be, so that everybody gets a chance to struggle for victory in the last turns.
Right. Yeah. You want it to be close games. That's the goal. And as far as the mission format goes, I think it's important to do sort of some test games for mission formats where possible. It's going to be pretty hard, I think, in this case, because people are building and painting their Ox armies, which is, a lot of little dudes to paint in 4 or 5 months. So,
and what timing too, with like Classic Ox being announced just last week. So, hopefully they'll arrive in time for people to like get their hands on them and get some plastic Dracosans and Lehman Russ on the table and that Second Command Squad. So the timing is good, but it's not generous, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a close call, but that's what all hobby projects, I think, the deadlines inspire us a little bit.
Yeah, nothing would happen without them, I think, unfortunately.
Without deadlines, yeah, absolutely, I agree. Okay, so we've kind of gone over the mission format, the what we're planning on doing, the list restrictions. The other thing I wanted to touch on was the tables and the terrain design, because that's a big factor in telling the narrative game. As you mentioned earlier, terrain's the third player on the table, right?
Yeah.
I know personally when I'm setting up tables, I'll put terrain down, and I can sometimes kind of get lost in the sauce, making a terrain table that looks really cool, that's almost telling a story with just the terrain. And then I pan back and realize I have to actually try to figure out how to deploy an army on this table I've made.
So, every time.
Yeah, exactly. And so I know that part of the registration fees that we're collecting for this event are going towards buying a new mat and some new tables worth of terrain. So what are your thoughts, ideas, plans for the terrain, and especially like the different table sets and that sort of thing?
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for our club to grow a little bit. We want to continue to provide really cool narrative events, and terrain is such an important part of a quality event, especially if you're a player like me or you, where we get lost in the sauce on the doll housing part of it. I generally am just playing the narrative guy, and then I have to deploy my army and start the first turn. I'm like, oh, I'm totally unprepared for this, but we want to set that up for other people, so walking into it, they're just immediately immersed into it, and they can put themselves at eye level of themselves as the commander in this terrain. So having a good complete set of that is oftentimes kind of a bottleneck in trying to grow, but a big signifier of a really top quality event, that and having great people and great armies and a really good culture in the local community to build with. So we've got a decent collection started. We just want to expand. Like, one of our club members, Derek, has an amazing set of urban terrain he's been building up, and he's been doing a lot of 3D board builds. So part of this prep has been going to painting some Sector Imperialis tiles, which I think are pretty hard to beat in the days of, neoprene mats and things like that.
Absolutely.
So
hard to roll on too, but worth it.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about you got to fill those gutters with some resin so that those stupid dice traps are not there. So filling that in, and then our host store, which we should probably mention where and when this is going to be. So this is going to be April 14th, starting at 10 a.m. That is a Sunday, so we're going to be trying to start off nice and early, promptly, and that's going to be at Westminster Hobbytown in Westminster, Colorado, on Wadsworth there. But they're a great host location, and they have a ton of resources for gamers with a lot of terrain sets and tables and things. But it's a little mixed matched. It's a big community spot. People can come in and play, and they're pretty much left to make use of the terrain provided. So just being prepared for that is part of my plan, and making sure we've got cohesive sets and that we're bringing a lot to the table ourselves, so that you're never going to run into a table where it's like half jungle with some icebergs and maybe like a dinosaur layer in there. Now these are going to be well-themed tables.
The sort of competitive 40K scene, they do a lot of their game days, game nights over there at Hobbytown Westminster, and they have a lot of very functional terrain, which is great for competitive players. But the cohesive sets that fill a full 4x6 Heresy board are a little bit rare and harder to come by, especially all painted up and looking great. So yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a drive for the club in general to be expanding our personal terrain collections that we can bring to these events. Several of us have one or two themed tables that we're sort of owning and getting together and preparing for the event. So I think the tables are going to look fantastic.
Yeah, it's a little bit different priority when you're talking about a narrative mission setup versus a competitive setup, right? Because ruins and repeatable terrain seems to be the priority when you're trying to run a big competitive event. You want your players to be able to come in and sort of expect a certain density and kind of know how to deal with a few templated kind of layouts, which both become topics of complaint in the meta over time, but also demands, ironically. But in the narrative section, we're not so concerned about that. At least I'm not. And if, as a player, that's something that bothers you, I would just try to kind of encourage you to shift your mindset or your goal post for what a good game means. And that's that you've got a table where it's not just ruins, because why are you fighting over ruins? It's you have clear outlined landmark features that are going to be something that you can imagine a force wanting or needing to take and occupy and to have a conflict around. And that is a bit of the challenge, is finding complete sets that have unique terrain features that stand out and read instantly on the table as a place worth fighting over and getting to. So that's really been what I've been getting organized on our side and kind of taking inventory at the club and at the store, so that we can get some nice sets together. And we've got a pretty good collection, so This
Yeah,
this event is going to help us round it out.
absolutely. Yeah, we've got some great club members here who have just bring their personal terrain collections to meetups and these events that we host, just to make sure that the tables look beautiful. And they always do. There hasn't been a bad table at any event we've run so far.
Yeah, and if there is one, don't worry, I'll come over and sprinkle rocks and dried plants and stuff on it.
True. That's true.
Sprinkle some boxes around. It'll be good.
Mm-hmm. That battle report sort of way of adding the actual sort of grass and rocks it looks fantastic, but you do have to vacuum later.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think we have got a very good idea of what this event is and like what the missions will look like. I think the biggest sort of mystery is always what people will actually bring, because like as you were talking about the examples for the strength-based objectives, there is a bit of a not quite biased, but sort of an assumed list that is mostly Exilia with some Space Marine spear tips. And while that might be the case for half the list or so, technically the list restrictions are just allies with less than half Astartes, right? So there could be people who bring knights and custodes, totally viable if not recommended. So
please don't do that if you have other options.
Exactly. So I know that there's a bunch of people that are bringing their Ox stuff, especially like the dedicated Ox player. He's actually adding Astartes to his Ox that he already has, which is sort of a fun reverse. But you have the list there, so let's sort of go over briefly some of the armies we're going to see and what the thoughts are on what they look like, how they'll perform, that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So the Ox / Space Marine, that was definitely the templated generic list idea in mind when kind of making this, but I didn't want to make it so prescriptive where people couldn't actually work with the collections they had, and if they have other ideas of something that's cool to do, we definitely want to see that, right? This event is about incentivizing and expanding the options and what's viewed on the table versus just making a new standard. Which I don't think one event's going to be able to do anyway, but we all know a painted army is much more likely to see table time, especially when we do a lot of fully painted events than one that's not. So give them a reason to.
And so like the fully painted meetups that we run, if you don't have your Ox painted, you might not take them out to the event, but if you paint them up for this prescriptive, sort of list restricted event, the next meetup, maybe you'll bring Ox, and we'll see more of these sort of weird lists in the wild, which is fun.
Yeah, bring your weirdness. So we've got some militia for sure out there. Joel's planning to bring militia and knights, and he's got a very cool kind of rebuild of a rogue trader era list, and I think he's actually building it out as closely as he can, maybe exactly to an army list that was originally printed in a campaign roll call or review of the belligerents. So that's his Mordian list, and he's found awesome 3D files for all those old school things. It's not my aesthetic, but he's so passionate about it, and he's been waving that banner for years. I think his tag has been Mordian for, I don't know, 20 years or
since I've known him. Yeah. And big shout out to Joel, just by the way. He's the local hobby hero that just is the best, all around guy playing Heresy in Colorado, I think.
Yeah, for sure. He's I can't give him enough credit. Awesome dude.
Yeah.
So he's also taking knights, similarly, they're of the same era of those rogue trader ones. So I think he's found files and found a producer, maybe even for some casting of the old armor cast armatures, and
a retro caster sort of upscaled them. I might have to get Joel to tell me exactly who these guys are. Battle casters maybe, but yeah, they redid basically the retro sculpts. They sort of redid them but upscaled them, and it's literally a guy casting these resin old school looking things in this garage. They're a bit on the goofy side as far as modern Heresy aesthetic goes, but they definitely they captured that retro look with his retro paint scheme.
There's a lot of primary colors going on in simple volumes, but if you're of that era, I think that's an army you're going to want to see and play against on the table, because it's gonna scratch a special itch deep in your heart there for the gaming ancestry of the heresy here.
You can call them grognards.
Yes, the grognards. It's very beardy. Yep. So he's representing with that, which will be cool to see because he's put a lot of love into that project. And then Derek, our resident Iron Warriors player, who's started the edition with Iron Warriors, and now he's up to something like 10,000 points. Just a madman.
More.
Yeah,
so productive.
He's finally letting the forges cool on armor to make a Solar Ox support list is the plan. And he's going to be running those as loyalist. He gets kind of pigeonholed to be our trader because we generally need one more in events, but I think he's finally going to be loyalist, and he's taken Solar Ox to really like stake it down that he's loyalist right this time, damn it. So that'll be cool. And I think he's maybe bringing the artillery support, so his gun pigs maybe sit back. We'll see. I was thinking he might be one of those people who chooses that defender role.
Yeah, for sure. Because the theme of his list being the gun pigs in the back is sort of the opposite of the traditional Astartes spear tip. So your objectives, like the defender ones, will make a little bit more sense for his list.
I'm sure the 4th Legion players would say everybody else is doing it wrong. It's the plotter that you send forward, and then you come in once the enemy is overwhelmed and out of bullets. But yeah, so I think that's going to be what we're seeing with that list. And then Evan, who is maybe we should drop some Instagrams here. Evan, who is Serrated Sun. Derek is Whip Tabletop Gaming. But Evan is taking.
Joel is at Mordian 7th as well.
7th. I was trying to remember the number. I knew there was like a regiment number in there. So Evan's converting up some crazy shit. He's got like a child soldier factory militia theme going on.
So grimdark. I love it.
And he's converting some mech in support of Death Guard. So he's like doing some brass etching and reposing and some like actual carved weathering and chipping onto some mech units. Excuse me. And then he's either taking Sons of Horus or Death Guard. So that's kind of a wild card as to like what the Astartes portion will be or the mech. But I'm pretty sure the child soldier militia tank heavy list is going to be featured there, and he'll be a filthy trader, which is nice. So that'll be good to see. Whatever he's doing is going to be, I think, highly converted with lots of little loving details poured into everything, and then a rush to paint everything in the last 2 weeks. So
yep, that sounds about right. He's our resident model builder and converter with some amazing skills. He actually, I think, takes commissions. So if you see something you like, reach out to him on Instagram.
Yes, Godspeed on your rush to paint everything, Evan. And then you're on my list, so why don't you tell the people what you're going to be ringing?
Yeah, one of the reasons Derek gets to be a trader this time is because I'm not taking my Blood Angels, so I'm actually running Demons of the Ruinstorm as my primary guys, which are obviously exclusively trader. I built up a big Demons of the Ruinstorm list to do the Cygnus campaign of Blood Angels versus Demons at Cygnus. So I have just a lot of those models available, and I'm not about to start painting 600 little child soldiers, so I wanted to bring the Demons. They fulfill, interestingly, they have a lot of strength 3, 4, and 5+ units that sort of fulfill all the obligations for scoring on their own. But with allies being necessary part of the list building, I'm going to be taking some word bearers that Daniel has. That Forge World shipped him for free instead of Chaos Dwarf, so what a lucky guy. So it's going to be mostly demons, which is just a bunch of weird flesh monstrosities, backed up by a word bearer esoterist with attack squad and some Ashen Circle, with the sort of theme that the Marines will be pushing forward. They're kind of working tangentially to the demons, sort of similar goals, but mostly just taking advantage of the chaos. The lore of the Ashen Circle is obviously that they are sort of assassin type guys that go after high value targets exclusively. And their rules aren't necessarily great for doing that against like raiders and command squads, but they are really great at killing basic infantry with their torrent hand flamers. So
Oh god, yeah.
I'm looking forward to using them pretty effectively at their actual lore-driven sort of mission statement, which should be fun.
That's awesome. Did you say you're taking an esoterist with them?
Yeah, so the HQ will be an esoterist.
Oh, sweet. So he's going to be summoning as well, potentially.
Maybe I wasn't planning on using him for summoning. My sort of idea was that the ritual had already happened, which is why the demons are deploying. And he's directing them in so much as you can direct demons, right? So he's trying to cause carnage, spread them out. Yeah.
Trying not to die after causing a huge mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely wiping the blood from his nose and his eyes and ears probably too.
So you're going to be using your demons mostly for the objective scoring on the strength 3 and the strength 5 side. What is it on the strength 3 side? Because this is based on their stat line, right? So unmodified strength characteristic. And with demons, they have that variable where first turn they're going to be +1 strength and toughness, turn 2 sane.
I'm very glad that it's the stat line and not the variable, because that would be so annoying to try to plan multiple turns ahead where it's changing.
That'd be big brain time for sure.
Absolutely. So the lesser the swarms, those are default strength 3, so they'll be able to go grab those sort of objectives, and it sort of makes sense because they are weird little bubbly monsters that have fingers, and they're not just clawed demonettes like my main lesser demons are. The lesser demons are default strength 4, so they'll be pushing for those objectives, and then obviously the big HQ sovereigns and heavy support. Behemoths will be pushing, strength 5 where that's necessary. To be honest, though, I think a lot of my big demons aren't going to be going for the strength 5 objectives, and they're really the only source of anti-tank that I have. And I'm guessing I'm going to be seeing a lot of tanks. Even with third line, I'm going to have trouble dealing with, 12 of them or whatever.
Yeah, they got their own job to do, which is kind of the whole philosophy of the fewer objectives. So you're not like leaving a lot of points on the table if you don't go for those location-based objectives with those higher strength units also. I got to say, it would be pretty cool to see those big demons, the sovereigns and stuff, go for maybe the defender objectives, because Kingslayer and Big Game Hunter are on that list. So Big Game Hunter, obviously, for the anti-tank if you're in the defender list, or Kingslayer, just a big fuck off evil demon going and taking out the enemy HQ seems pretty rad. So maybe
and demoralizing, and the 60-foot demon lady comes and cleaves your commander in half. You're going to be a little shitting your pants.
Yeah, very cool. It's important as a demon player to terrorize your opponent. So
absolutely.
I hope that happens for you for sure.
Thanks.
Nice. And then I think on the next list, we've got Daniel's going to be Solar Ox, and then he's, I think, bringing a blend of mech and knights as well. I do like about this, so it's not limited to just 2 detachments. You just have to have an allied detachment. So having kind of the combined bouquet of all things but Astartes sort of thing almost going on here with Solar Ox, mechs, and knights. I guess you could throw Talons of the Emperor in there or assassins to really round it out. But that's a nice spread where it also feels like the mech are doing a role that the Astartes typically would in terms of like higher value leadership against the horrors of the heresy. But there's no actual Astartes present. It's just weirdness, which would be cool.
And fun to see. His mech list is always cool to see on the table.
Yeah, and I think he's going, what is the cyber theurgy he's taking? It's Myrmidex mostly, right? So he's going to have some pretty hefty boys with those strength 4 wound dudes running around with his Magos, I think. So he'll have a pretty beefy unit for those strength 4 objectives, and then some knights for some anti-tank. And then I believe he's taking,
compared to baseline humans, he will be running those Myrmidex into.
Oh yeah, they're pretty brutal. I think they're like one of the stronger options for mech right now. If you're going for a competitive build, going mono, Myrmidex is the way right now. So It should be a pretty
that's not what he's
formidable list.
doing, but it should be a fun unit at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's taking some tanks, I think, and then a few rifle tertios, so there'll be a good mix of infantry, and then some support tanks going on there. So that should be pretty like mech heavy as one would think, which will be cool. I do wonder how like tank heavy lists are gonna do. I think with a couple people taking knights, it's probably going to be good to have some firepower. With all of the mission point scoring being infantry based, there's obviously a trade-off there in terms of scoreability. But
Right.
A rifle tercio is not going to hold up well when templates start falling in there. So having some tanks as insurance is a good idea for sure.
Yeah, there's a balance there to be had for sure. You can't take the all tanks like 15 Lehman Russ list, but you also can't ignore the firepower potential of the Ox tanks.
Yeah, you're gonna want some power fist or melt the bombs or something running around there, at least. So cool. And then Ben's got a pretty cool list. He's a madman. I think he's maybe one of the busiest of us right now. Yet he has decided for the third narrative event in a row to like just make a completely new army. So Godspeed to you as well, Ben.
Ridiculous.
Ben is running Solar Ox with Sons of Horus, but he's traitor, so it counts as Solar Ox. He's actually got some great Lunar Ox models from a third party, so they're very spooky, kind of like traitorous variants.
They'll have chaos stars on them and whatnot. Like they're full on worshiping the dark gods type chaos guys.
Yeah, so that's pretty sick. I have not yet seen the models, but I'm pretty excited to see that. I was bummed when a lot of like the chaos militia stuff got pulled from the Forge World website. So it'll be cool to see some of that flavor on the table. And then for Sons of Horus, he's going really lean. So he's leaning heavily into like the Astartes are just there to make sure like things go as planned. Like
point the idiots in the right direction type thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's actually taking some Justarin. So it'll be a command squad, I think, of Justarin around a Praetor and Cataphractii armor. And they're more or less like making sure the Solar Ox or the Lunar Ox do their job and going to be pushing up. I forget what else he has in support of there. Maybe a Spartan or something like that. But it's mostly the Solar Ox's show, and then the Sons of Horus are kind of insurance to extort the right commitment from their allies, which is perfect.
And he's doing the classic Sons of Horus spear tip attack with a hefty squad of Terminators just punching forward. Like that's exactly what you want to see. He's the embodiment of your sort of idealized list for this event.
Yeah, they're going to be a problem too, because he's like, okay, I'm only taking minimum Space Marines, but he's taking like the hardest to deal with as well. So it's like, there's not many of them, but
they'll kick your ass.
They're going to be pretty unstoppable, I think. So they're just going to create that spear tip, and then Solar Ox pushing up in the wake, and then it'll be their game to lose probably. Richard is taking Alpha Legion and question mark. Very Alpha Legion of him. So we'll see. We'll see what comes together for the event here. I've got to check in with him, see what's going on with that.
Last time I talked to him, he was basically still deciding on what to do. He was waiting on rules. He was hoping the models might come out. So maybe now that they've been previewed, he is just going to try to speed his way through an Ox detachment of the Duplastics. But
yeah, there we go. I'm sure there's many options floating around in his head, and then he'll take a complete left turn, and we'll see something wild. Maybe just like a Drukhari Corsair army that the Alpha Legion have somehow bribed into showing up to the battle.
Oh, that's illegal.
We don't know. And then Alexander's taking his Sons of Horus, which are beautifully painted, and that's been his main army for the edition. He got a really nice kind of initial 3,000 point, 2,500 point list up at the start, and now he's going to be adding on militia to that, so that'll be cool to see. And then Dylan, who we talked about, is the Colorado Springs resident. He's going to be, I think he might be running Trader, it sounds like. I wonder if I
Oh
have that
no,
wrong.
I don't
But he's
know. I'm not
playing.
sure on his allegiance. He, as far as I know, he plays mostly whatever the enemy isn't, because his Ox are just going to all die anyway.
Gotcha. Well, he's Solar Ox and I think Astartes. So we'll see.
Yeah,
what
he's
comes
adding
out
a
of that.
Death Guard drop pod contingent to his regular Solar Ox list. So,
Oh well, there
sort
we
of,
go.
yeah, reverse on the usual Death Guard Relentless March. Instead, the humans get to do that while a Dreadclaw, and I think it's 2, maybe 3 pods of dudes coming in.
Oh, that's right. I saw his work in progress of his Dreadclaw. He's got the creams down and some nice kind of color modulation going on there with some browns and tans in there already going on. So that'll be cool. Yeah, I would love to see more drop pods. That's kind of another thing that is just very characteristic of the setting that unfortunately with the current rule set we don't see a lot, because drop pod assault is just not that great.
And it's also you have to have 12, or I think vets can take 1. So you have 1 or 12. Like you can't do a half and half drop pod assault list, which I think is probably the biggest limiter, because building 12 drop pods would just be terrible. It would take so long. It would be awful.
Yeah, that is. There's no kind of sampling that list. You're all in on it.
To be committed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. But it'll be cool to see some of that. And then, like, again, as an allied list, it's a good way to throw, 500, 1,000 points or something in and see how it goes. I think in this mission, like in support, being able to drop down on those objectives is going to be pretty good. Or if you're as defender, to be able to come in on backline behind your opponent as they move forward to take your ground, and kind of do some base trading will probably be pretty good with that. So
absolutely
be interesting to see. Yeah, and then Connor's going to be doing a militia mech Imperial Fist trifecta, going
Classic.
fully loyalist there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's going to be holding the line, I'm sure.
Yeah, his militia are very fun. He has had them for a very long time as both a 40k guard army and a Imperial militia army in 30k, and he's run them against my Blood Angels, and I sort of just wrecked a bunch of humans. It was very fun.
Yeah, his list is great, and he's definitely teched into it and kind of got the swing of it over the last couple of events. So I think in terms of like people just having familiarity with some of these lesser seen factions, he's going to be in a good spot, because he run, at least against me, he ran a lot of needle carbines, and those are nasty when you're getting shot with just buckets full of them with their poison.
Absolutely. And he has some good Lehman Russ that he takes that are effective, his little unit of demolishers.
Yeah, and those demolishers do work against Space Marines and Terminator. They don't really care about your armor, so they're going to get enough hits off on you, going to be taking you out. So that'll be pretty good. And then Michael, I think hopefully he's able to come, but he's looking at doing kind of Blood Angels, Sisters of Silence, Custodes, classic red, gold, and gold. Defenders of Terra type of vibe here. So that's going to be a hard hitting alliance there for sure. Cool to see Sisters of Silence. I think he's mainly going with them as kind of his primary points fill, and then a little bit of Custodes, and then a pretty hard hitting little Death Star of Blood Angels with Dawnbreakers in support there. So
and it's mostly because he's a Custode and then Blood Angels player primarily, so he has all those models. So he's trying, from my understanding, he's trying to fill as many points as possible before the event with Sisters. So his final list is probably not set in stone. It's just how many Sisters can he paint.
Paint all the Sisters. I really love the Sisters. Just the idea of them will be cool to see, especially with some demons on the table. And hopefully we'll see 1 or 2 more people come out with demons. Tom Allen's bringing his word bearers, I believe, and demons. I'm
his
assuming
demons are beautiful.
He's got a really nice collection there. I believe that's what he's taking. He might switch it up on us and bring Ultramarines in an allied list, but He's got a great collection ready to go with word bearers and those. So be a good showing of word bearers and terrible horse with those.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and then Bryce is probably bringing Blood Angels and the Knights as well. A heavy Armiger heavy list, so that'll be pretty brutal. But he is going to be struggling on those strength 3 objectives.
Right. Yeah, he might be demolishing the enemy, but he's not scoring points with that list.
Which that is a strategy. So
yeah, I mean, if you table them, it's hard for them to score points too.
This is true. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. That's what he was looking at probably doing. And then we've got an Alpha Legion Sisters of Silence list from Jamie Dormus racking up. And I think there's going to be some assassins potentially going on in that list as well. So a very shooty heavy. I think there's going to be some Exodus in that Alpha Legion list.
That list sounds devastating for my demon.
Yeah, that might be a problem. Yeah, and then we've got Chris Vineski with Sisters of Silence and White Scars, and I'm pretty excited about that matchup as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I have not seen too many White Scars on the table. I think they're just hard to paint. So
they're so striking when they are down, and it seems like people who take them on kind of know that they're a hobby challenge, so they really try their best to actually like rise to meet it. So I feel like when I see White Scars, they're usually really well done, just because I think people sort of know what they're getting into and hunker down for it.
Almost no one half-asses the White Scars army.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
All right, so we've gone through the list. Is that everyone that we have signed up so far?
It is, yeah. So got a pretty good list. There's a few undeclared there. We've got Fernando and Thomas signed up, and it's a mystery to me what they're taking, but I think Fernando's probably going to be his Thousand Sons. So there might be some demons in there. It'd be cool to see some Zinch flavor if that's the case. I'm speculating here.
Yeah, total speculation, because his Thousand Sons are beautiful. I just played against them. He's wrapping up the painting on those guys. I don't know what else he has, so that'll be fun to see. Thousand Sons make a cool allied force, I think, with their psychic potential.
For sure. It'd be also a cool idea would be seeing them with mech and then their special automata, like kind of blending, sort of blurring the line between those factions. So
yeah, those weird magic mech suits. All right, so with all of the lists gone over, we have just a couple more things I wanted to hit tonight. We've talked about how the event is structured and everything, but as far as just like how would it look if it were exactly what you wanted and pictured and dreamed it would be? Is there anything else you want to add about like the event itself before we move on to some sponsors and talking about Westy?
Just total carnage, blood, explosions, betrayal, stabbings, at least 2 police escorts required.
Wow.
Just a real barn burner would be great. Now, but I'd love to see a full roster there of people showing up, and just great list. Part of the joy in all of this is kind of like the terrain setup with the dollhousing, but it's getting to see people put their pride and joy out on the table. And if you've painted a new faction for this event, or finish something, or put something on the table that you're proud of, I think that's a victory in itself. And to get 20 people with 40 different factions at minimum on the table is a huge boon to our local scene, and a big credit to everybody, and just a joy to be able to share that. Like whatever your skill level is, if you're meeting that minimum painting requirement, getting stuff based, it does so much to create immersive games and create a culture that's enchanting. And I think really sells how great Warhammer is, and helps to, I think, spread that, and will serve to bring other people in as we talk about this event and share photos and stuff. So one is just seeing those projects completed. It's really intended to be a big a big celebration and incentive for people to do those passion projects and to make decisions based on what things they love and what kind of interactions in the setting and stories they want to tell versus what they feel they have to take in order to have a chance at winning a game in their local, kind of weekly meetup. So that's a big one. And then,
Absolutely.
beyond that, it's just great game moments. It's a bit of a leap of faith when you're deviating from a standard mission pack or going out on your own to create new narrative missions and to do things. And everybody who's going on this journey with us and building a list for the event is taking that leap of faith as well, that these are going to be good competitive games, that the objectives are going to be achievable and contentious, and that there will be exciting moments throughout those games, and it won't be a decided victory from turn one. So we've been doing this for like 7 years now, making bespoke missions and building things. But when you're bringing it to a new group of people and expanding that, there's always some concern that people may not get it or that it won't quite play out without some shepherding. So I'm a little anxious but excited to see how these missions play out with everybody. And hopefully it goes really well, and I think it will. Put a lot of work into making sure these missions are relatively balanced and should go, I think, pretty decently. Games Workshop, despite their flaws, does a pretty good job of making sure stuff does what it feels it should do when you play in the spirit of narrative gaming. When you're trying to break the game, not so much. That falls apart pretty quickly. But I think if you think about it more as like a cooperative RPG with some random competitive elements to it, it tends to work pretty well, I think. So it should be good.
I think so too. And I will say that based on the last couple of events that we've run, even back to Connor's sort of narrative Trebian system shenanigans, and then Ben's last event, we've done the unique mission packs with strange rules, different objectives, tables that are not balanced. And I haven't even really heard of anyone having a bad game. So I think that fostering that, especially in the sort of preamble build up to the event, as well as during the event, getting the right players there, encouraging it. When half the attendees are part of the Terranborn Club, pushing the narrative experience, led by a great event person who's made a fun mission pack, it unfolds itself. And it's very rare that you're going to have a bad player or a bad game, I think. So I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of confidence in it based on our last events as well. I mean, we did ISFAN 3 and ISFAN 5 last year, and both of those campaigns played out to the dice roll exactly as the novels would have you believe it went down. So we've got it down pretty well, I think, in terms of conveying the tabletop version of the heresy as it's represented in the narrative we all love. And
absolutely,
there's some luck that goes into it, and there's still some surprises, but we seem to find ourselves to a pretty good endpoint with all of these. So it's just great to be able to make them, and I just want to share it with more people. We're trying to grow our terrain collection. So coming out of this, looking to increase the amount of armies that are fully painted in the scene and themed well, and we'll be rewarding that, so we can talk about those kind of event awards that we have set up. But we're also growing our capacity to do events like this going forward, and
absolutely,
ideally working towards a 2-day event that will warrant people coming out and kind of maybe reaching from a broader area, and we can tell bigger stories and party it down in the evening time between those 2 game days also. So
absolutely. We're sort of on a slow grow league of event organizing, which there's a lot of learning to be done, but so far we haven't had a bad event yet. So let's keep that streak going. So that said, this is definitely going to be our biggest event so far. Our last event had 10 people, I want to say. Is that right? Ben's event?
No, I think there were 20 there, right? It was teamed though, so there was 10 teams. Because we
Right.
were rolling
5
on the
tables
D20.
with 2v2 each is 20. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. There were a couple of people that didn't show, so it was like 17 or 18 guys, I think, that played.
Yeah, and then I want to say we were close to 20 at a previous event, but yeah, we're growing a bit. I think this is a little bit more involved in Ben's event, just in terms of the army build requirements, obviously, and now adding prize support. So the total number of attendees is about the same. Hopefully, a few more.
But it's also not teams of 2, so the amount of tables that we need to support 20 players is doubled. So
yeah.
definitely our biggest event as far as getting tables together. And you just mentioned the prize support, so that's a big thing that is a first for this as well. So far, we've just been doing little events at the local game store, and the prize support is maybe a couple bucks towards their inventory. So now we actually have a couple official sponsors giving us some prizes to give away. So let's talk about what those are, and then what the categories are, because we're definitely, being narrative driven, not doing, oh, you're the best at this game, here's some extra money that you totally earned. It's some different categories. So what are we giving people, and why are we giving it to them?
Yeah, so we're under no illusion that this is going to be an esport where the best player is going to be able to make a career off of the Terranborn events. But there is still a best player, but it's going to be a subjective score. So that's going to be a bit of a vote around the event. It's a little difficult on that because there's only two games, so not everybody's going to play everybody. So there'll be a weighted judging on that as well. And I'm really looking at best player in terms of sportsmanship. This is also someone who plays smartly, plays well, is a gentleman or lady at the table, and gives benefit of doubt to their opponent, communicates clearly, but ultimately plays efficiently, and has a good experience on the tabletop. And I think those qualities tend to lead to somebody who often plays well and wins a lot of games, because they're just putting their energy and focus in the right areas in that tabletop experience a lot of times. So that's the best player.
Everyone should try to win that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. This is a narrative event, but we want the games to feel fun, and competing is part of it, ultimately go try to score those points. That's just a piece of it, but it's an important piece. And I recognize there are players more competitive than I in the local scene and in Heresy, and they should be included as well. And especially if you're volunteering to constrain yourself to a narrative list and function, and then do the best you can with that. That's kind of captures the philosophy, right? It's read the room and then make the best out of it, sort of situation. And in this case, the room also has a best painted unit and best army theme award, so 2/3 of the awards are going more towards the hobby side here. So best painted unit, that's going to be kind of, again, a combined public vote with a weighted judging score on top of that as well. So we'll have an armies on parade type of thing between games, which is always my favorite part of it. If people have a display board they want to bring, that definitely is going to help with the theme part of stuff. And then I'll ask people to kind of mark a unit that they want to sort of nominate for consideration, or if they don't have anything they want to nominate, kind of scan through those armies for what's standing out and looking at those key characters or those elite units. And so there'll be a prize for that, as well as a best army theme. And this is a subjective thing, but again, a group vote with a weighted judging score on top of that. And, we're looking at what makes sense as a combined arms detachment with these allies that are working together. Does the basing kind of tie into the paint scheme? Does the army composition make sense? Does the build kind of fit the spirit of the narrative, where we're talking about shifting battle lines in the middle of a larger war zone where these units are having to work together to achieve objectives, and these unsung heroes of the Imperium kind of rise into the occasion. So that's going to be a little bit of a know it when you see it. There's not a strict rubric for these things. Same with the best painted. It's not going to be a checklist, because there are so many ways to accomplish that. It's kind of, in one way, sort of ties your hand behind the back, I think, when we're talking about scoring these kind of things.
Yeah, because we're not shooting for just get the base number of layers on a model. You know, it's got to be, that's the minimum to get in. So that's not part of the rubric, right? That's just the entry fee.
Yeah, and you don't want somebody to like lose points because they didn't do a freehand when that doesn't fit the style of that unit or their army, right?
Yeah, they're doing a dark, grimdark Planshitsu type scheme that's all super desaturated, and there's not a lot of place for anything other than grime and dirt. What, you know, where are they going to put a freehand? So I agree that rubrics can be stifling.
Yeah, so I mean, we're not going to be punishing people if they don't meet it. You know, best painted, it's going to be a mixture of, I think, completion. You know, execution is the focus on the right places in the model. Does it have a sense of drama? Does it look like the choices you made were intentional? Is there enough contrast to draw me in? You know, is there technical execution where the things that need to be cleanly represented are cleanly represented, right? So, and again, that depends on style. Some things allow for some roughness, but ultimately, you kind of know it when you see it. Yep. And there's going to be basically a $60 gift card to Westminster Hobbytown for each of those. So each one is weighted the same in terms of the award you get, which is
excellent.
Great. Spend directly there at the store. We want to support the store.
Absolutely.
This is part of the deal here, you know, as a little gift back. It is a great boon to be able to have people giving space for us to do this and be a bunch of nerds and wild out and take over and get their RC track out of there for a Sunday and just set up shop there all day. It's a lot of square footage for a retail space to give up. So we want to spend some money there. And the easiest way I can do that is to put money in the players' hands to spend.
Yes. Yep. Guarantee they'll spend it there.
Exactly. And then on top of that, we have some corporate sponsors. So we've got Fallout Hobbies has come back and issued us 3 gift cards of different denominations for use. So those will be issued as codes, which is awesome. So they're one of our sponsors for the event. And those are going to be door prizes. So we'll be doing kind of a random raffle at the event there for those. So just thank you for coming. And then Monument Hobbies as well, I believe, has given us kind of the same deal. So a discount on their products. And both of these companies make great shit. I have a lot of the Fallout Hobbies stencils and their decal sets, and they're a great source for things that kind of fit the feel of different aspects of the Imperium or even Xeno races that are non like Legion specific, or if you want to branch out of like the same decal set that everybody has and just get squad markings or patterning checkers or whatever. You
need hazard stripes, they've got it. You need a Gothic number sets, they've got that too. So you don't need to just try to find all your old tank decal sheets to find a Gothic 2. You can just get a sheet of them.
Yeah. And I think the Heresy is like a much bigger sandbox for graphic styles than 40K, and the background being this collection of disparate human civilizations that have been now brought together after the Great Crusade. So you've got more diversity, and it's cool to show that stuff. And the Legions had a lot more identity before they got sort of rendered down into Space Marine chapters or kind of left without resources in the Eye of Terror. So it's a great place to go for inspiration and to add unique flavor to your units. So Fallout Hobbies is an awesome place, and we really encourage people to put those decals on, the squad markings, things like that. They really It's one of those things you can do on your models that doesn't take a lot of time for the value it's going to add visually to that project. So definitely hit them up. And then if you're at the event, there's a good chance you'll walk away with a little something for them.
Absolutely. And they are at fallouthobbies.com and then also at Fallout Hobbies on Instagram. So check them out.
Yeah. And then Monument Hobbies is our other sponsor there that has offered our prize support as well. So same thing, we'll be doing some door prizes there. And they make fantastic paints. I have literally heard nobody say anything bad about the Pro Acryl paint line.
Yeah, it's so many positive reviews that it's making me want to, switch over a little bit.
Yeah, I had the chance to use some of them at Adepticon during a few painting classes because they were one of the sponsors there and provided paints for a lot of the classrooms. And they're very easy to work with. They're very kind of silky smooth. And they're expanding the paint line. So initially they just had like primary, secondary, and tertiary colors and some neutrals, getting that sort of like basic art school, art 1 and art 2 paint set up in there. So you can mix whatever you want out of that. But they've been doing partnered paint lines with people like Ben Comets and John Ninus and a few others to put together like a signature series, which is pretty cool. And there's some great colors in there that I'm tempted to get. And then they make good brushes and soaps and just everything you need to get your stuff painted. And that's what we want to encourage. We want painted models out there.
Absolutely.
Fully painted is for closers. We stand the Aya Horus mantra here. So
absolutely. They are monumenthobbies.com, and then their Instagram is at monument_hobbies. So check them out as well. The sort of thread between all of these prizes we're giving away is elevating your hobby game. If it's paints, Pro Acryl paints or stencils and decals, or just, new models at the store. What we want to promote via what we're picking to do prize support for, as well as, just the sponsors that we sought out, is elevating your hobby, getting things painted to a higher standard.
Yes. And, if you're attending the event or you're in the area, you just want to, promote some hobby of your own here in the local Denver scene, hit us up on Instagram at Terranborn, all one word. Would love to, share some whips from people as they're getting ready for this event and kind of track that lead up and just get it some buzz going on, get people excited, because I'm excited to see people coming together. And it's, it's a big effort for a lot of guys who are coming. So, keeping that energy going and sharing progress is always a good motivation.
Absolutely. So that's the place to find us. It's Instagram at Terranborn. In addition to Terranborn here, we host a monthly meetup in Colorado. Varies between location, but it's often at the same Hobbytown Westminster that this event will be at. Check out the Colorado Horus Heresy Discord and Facebook pages for details on those events. I will always be posting them up there. And in addition, I run a monthly hobby hangout on Mondays, which you can join to, talk nerdy stuff and paint. Those links are always posted to the same place as the Discord and the Facebook group for Colorado Heresy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that covers this event. So we might be doing some more coverage of this as we lead up to it. But if you're interested in attending in the Colorado area, reach out to us on Instagram, reach out to Sam on Discord, somehow find us, let us know you want to come. It is in April, and we're looking very much forward to getting as many people out there as we can.
Yeah, hit me up. If you just message us, we'll send you the information to join the event. And then once your entry fee is paid, just $20, then we'll secure your spot there, get you all plugged in and ready to go. And then we'll kind of shoot reminders and updates as we're getting closer. But I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there.
All right, perfect. And then if you want to follow us on Instagram, we both post hobby work in progress, pictures of games, that sort of thing as well. I am at Geek in XS. That's in XS as in Nicholas Xavier Smith. And you can follow me on Instagram to see all my blood angels. What is your Instagram there, Sam?
It is at Yandin Sam, which is a totally made up Games Workshop word. So it is IYANDENSAM, which has been completely co-opted and overrun by Third Legion posting, as the Third Legion like to do with the Eldar. So
they've stolen your spirit stones.
Yeah, I'll be returning to the ghost robots at some point, but for now, trying to get that corrupted Third Legion going on. I'm potentially going to be the first and only person ever to take the corrupted Astartes battle list with Fulgrim and actually enjoy it. So we'll see how that goes. I've got some Slanesh demons in the work, finishing up 2,000 points of that, and then I've got to do some finishing touches on my elite list for the Emperor's Children. So
excellent.
I'll be posting up updates to that as I get those guys wrapped up. So come follow me. Give me a reason to post more. Come interact with me on there.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me and talking about this event, Sam. I'm looking forward to it immensely. This has been the Terranborn podcast, where the narrative always prevails.
Appreciate you. Check you guys later.
All right, so the guest today was Sam House, and he has a wonderful Emperor's Children army that he has been building for Heresy 2.0 that he started collecting and converting before the new edition dropped. And his vision for a narrative force is pretty intense, as he's going for late Heresy, sort of already fully corrupted and disgusting, vile Emperor's Children, just doing the most and worst things. So in that theme, he has written a short poem that is sort of encapsulating his personal forces disposition and plan of action when it comes to taking over an entire planet and then just doing awful things to everybody there, especially the ruling classes. So his force is called the Prince's Benevolent, and this reading, done by my wife Caitlin Zindel, is the Decree of the Prince's Benevolent.
We come in the twilight, the failing afterglow of a noonday hard worked for and sweltering with the spoils of its exertions. We whisper to your sons and daughters, your subjects and their charges, even before the end of your reign, and your restless sleep at the autumn of your conquests. Through the Emperor's great works, may your nations prosper and swell beyond the manifest means to count up your holds, and may your larders grow ripe and foul with accumulation. We come upon your evening, our decadence, and succor a tonic to the anxieties of your tribe's pacing inheritors. We draw out their need for approval, their lust for your guidance, the manic celebration of a bottomless wealth open to their bitter hearts, left cold in vacant palaces as younglings to errant fathers. We noble aristocrats, artisans, scholars, we call upon your grace. Throw open your storehouses, carve up your smokehouses, stoke the fires of your hearth, pour out your decanters, strike up your poets, your instrumentalists, your weeping criers, and belting revelers. Dance with us. Be our hosts and our audience. Lend us your admiration, your generosity, and your whims. Let us draw finely upon your patience and your masks. Spend coffers to bear stone, and cheat your steel walls to soft lead. Let us touch upon your needs and your discomforts, your joys and your blisses. Let us extract your jubilation and leave droughts in your throats. Let us tear confessions of maddened frustration and call consciousness to gaze upon your hearts, to bring isolation to bear. What are you really? you small, meek thing, you one of a kind, you fretting artist, leader, lover, soldier, good servant left squandered. Let us be your mercy and your judgment, your sour breast and your dark champion. Let us be your need and your wanting. Let us in, princes and princesses. Let us make fanfare of your superiority until every last gem is plucked from its setting, every signet pulled from the desiccated grasp of your forebears to fund its hiking revelry. And as our rapacious appetites ride the beauty of your daughters and the agony of your buggered sons to their epitomes of degradation, we shall revel in our zenith. We shall emerge in the morning of your smoldering worlds as phoenixes reborn.